Hello, my name is Charles Hodgson and I'm a Chief Investigator at Private Investigators UK. Over the years I've worked on many weird and wonderful cases that many people have found to be very interesting and indeed funny. Although the names, dates and places have been changed to protect the innocent, the cases I'm going to talk about are very, very real. The case I'm going to share with you today is who owns the pair of size 22 Frilly red knickers. A very angry woman called Claire contacted Private Investigators UK looking for help to find who was the owner of the size 22 red Frilly knickers. Claire herself was only 5 foot and a size 8 and didn't have any red underwear, so she was very unhappy when she found the knickers in her husband's pocket. She'd been married to Chris for over 15 years and had 3 young children, so can't have been any of their girlfriends. It must be something to do with him. I asked Claire to describe a typical day and a typical week for Chris. Chris himself was a builder. He owned a very small family building firm. He worked with his brother and ironically worked with Claire's brother as well. She was absolutely certain if her brother-in-law wasn't going to say anything, her brother definitely would if Chris was actually playing away. In the evenings, 3 times a week, Claire and Chris went to the gym. They also went out a couple of times a week. At the weekends, Chris and Claire spent the time with the kids. So when was the time that Chris was actually going to be playing away? The only time that Claire couldn't account for was a Friday night. Chris would go out for drinks with a friend, and that was the only time Chris could have played away. So what we organised was surveillance for the next Friday night. We followed Chris out of the house. Chris drove down the road. About 2 miles down the road he picked up his friend. From there, the two of them drove to a set of flats. Chris parked the car outside the flats. Both guys got out. They walked to the flats, and the flats themselves, there were 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top, and a set of stairs in the middle. They went inside, you could see them walk up the stairs, and the next thing we saw was the top left-hand flat. The lights went on. This is where the surveillance got interesting. Had we just found the location of the owner of the size 22 Frilly red knickers? The problem was, from what we could see, we could only see 2 people moving around. If he had met 2 more people, we'd expect to see 3, maybe 4 shadows at the windows every now and then. Suddenly, out went the lights. They'd only been up there for about 40 minutes. We could see the lights of the stairs come on, and out of the front door came how many people? Not 4, but only 2. And more importantly, it was 2 ladies. And as they walked to the street light, suddenly we saw it wasn't 2 ladies at all. It was Chris and his friend, completely done up as women and completely in drag. The 2 of them got in the car and drove 4 or 5 miles down to a well-known transvestite bar. When Chris and his mate got inside the club, they sat at the bar. They sat with 2 other men in drag. The 4 of them had a fantastic time. They just chatted. There wasn't anything sexual about it at all. It was like 4 guys going out for a beer on a Friday night. At Private Investigators UK, throughout the surveillance, we like to keep our client involved, in other words, in the loop. So Claire, during this time, was being informed of everything that was happening. Not unsurprisingly, of course, she was shocked. She was expecting a woman, but this obviously was a very different situation. We talked a lot through the evening, and her main concern was, is he gay? And or is there anybody else involved? What was very clear that there wasn't. Claire was understandably confused. I suggested to her, was there any way she could go for the evening so that she could actually clear her head? She said yes, she could go to her sister's, and it wasn't unusual for her to go round there and stay there. So I said, well, why don't you take the children, go round to your sister's and think it through so that in the morning when you speak to Chris, you've got a clear head and you know exactly what's going on. I spoke to Claire in the morning, and what she made very clear was this. She loved her family. She loved her life, but she really needed to understand where Chris was coming from. So the 2 of them sat down, and Chris made it very clear it wasn't something sexual, it's just something he needed to do. Chris also made it very clear he didn't want to lose her, and he didn't want to lose the kids, but it was something he had to do. So they came up with a solution. The last Friday of every month, Chris and his friend would go down to the bar, as long as it was just simply that, and there was nobody else involved. What this case goes to show, there are many weird and wonderful ways of living your life and being happy. It's been a year since the case, and I have actually spoken to Claire in the meantime. And yes, they are getting on very, very well. Nothing has changed. Everybody's happy. And ironically enough, the owner of the size 22 Frilly knickers was in fact her husband.